Hello everyone, today I will read the Environment and Natural Resources Code. The episode 1.2 we will focus on Book 2. Environmental Management and Sustainable Mechanism. Section 1. Disaster Risk Reduction and Management. Chapter 1. General Provisions. Article 20. Purpose. This section aims to manage, prevent, and reduce disaster risks and restore damages and/or impacts in the Kingdom of Cambodia. Article 21. Scope. The scope of this section applies to managing, preventing, reducing, and restoring the damages and/or impacts in the Kingdom of Cambodia. Chapter 2. Responsible Institutions. Article 22. Responsible institutions. The ministry or institution responsible for the disaster sector shall be responsible for disaster management in compliance with the provisions of this code and relevant legal instruments. Article 23. Roles and duties of responsible institutions. The ministry or institution responsible for the disaster sector has the following roles and duties. A. Develop drafts of policies, strategic plans, activity plans, other legal instruments, and technical guidelines for disaster management. B. Coordinate with the ministry or institution and stakeholders in seeking funds to support disaster restoration and management. C. Advise and propose to the royal government to put forward policies and measures on disaster preparedness and management to respond to the emergency and ensure the safety of the citizens. D. Propose to the royal government on the allocation of contingency funds, materials, and human resources to prevent and respond to emergencies and restore all damages and/or impacts before, during, and after the disaster. E. Disseminate information on disaster management to the citizens and develop human resources to enhance capacity for effective disaster management. Article 24. Cooperation on disaster management. The ministry or institution responsible for the disaster sector shall cooperate with the ministry responsible for environment and natural resources, relevant ministry or institution, and subnational administration to A. Develop disaster management and reduction planning to reduce the impacts of natural or man-made disasters. B. Prepare for prevention and reduction of risks before disaster, emergency responses during a disaster, and restoration of damages and/or impacts after disasters. C. Assess the causes of vulnerability to disaster. D. Strengthen the capacity of relevant institutions and subnational level administration to manage, prevent, reduce disasters, and to restore damages/impacts. E. Consult and collect inputs from citizens, competent ministries or institutions, subnational administration, and stakeholders to build disaster resilience. F. Promote public awareness, organize training and education, and encourage participation to manage, prevent, and reduce disasters and to restore damages and/or impacts. Section 2. Management of Biodiversity Resources for Sustainable Development. Chapter 1. General Provision. Article 25. Purpose. This section provides for biodiversity resources management and conservation and sustainable use of ecosystem services. Article 26. This section shall apply to biodiversity resources management and conservation, the use of ecosystem services, and biosafety management for sustainable development in the Kingdom of Cambodia. Chapter 2. Responsible Institutions. Article 27. Responsible ministries or institutions. The ministry responsible for environment and natural resources shall be responsible for biodiversity resources management and conservation, sustainable use of ecosystem services, and biosafety management. Article 28. Roles and duties of the ministry responsible for environment and natural resources. The ministry responsible for environment and natural resources shall have the following roles and duties. A. Implement international legal instruments concerning the environment, biodiversity, resources, and biodiversity to which the Kingdom of Cambodia is a state party. B. Coordinate national reporting, biodiversity situation evaluation, ecosystem service use, and recommendations to strengthen biodiversity resources management, conservation, and ecosystem service use for sustainable development. Siege. Lead international negotiations to express the position of the Kingdom of Cambodia on biodiversity at international forums. Each develop draft policies, legal instruments, strategic plans, activity plans, and intervention programs to create herbarium, botanical garden, botanical collection, genetic bank, biodiversity conservation sites outside national sanctuaries to promote conservation, research, technology exchanges, and dissemination and raise awareness to the public. Each develop draft policies, legal instruments, strategic plans, activity plans, measures, conservation and development programs, management programs, research programs, collection and identification, species restoration and evaluation of functions, roles, and values of biodiversity resources and ecosystems for conservation and sustainable development. F. Comment on, control, monitor, and effectively implement policies, legal instruments, strategic plans, and activity plans for research on biodiversity resources and ecosystems to enhance and promote education, training, dissemination, and technological exchanges. Each develop legal instruments and procedures for collecting and compiling biodiversity and ecosystem data to report on national biodiversity conditions and monitor the conditions. H. Comment on and control the research procedures, methodology, and documentation, verify research results before publishing documents for national dissemination, and coordinate and lead the National Biodiversity Research Forum to strengthen cooperation among researchers and disseminators. I. Support and enhance innovation, collect data, research, educate, disseminate, and provide training to relevant ministries or institutions on biodiversity resources management and ecosystem services for sustainable development. J. Establish sustainable financing mechanisms for biodiversity resources and ecosystem conservation to ensure that functions, roles, and values of biodiversity and ecosystem services are recognized and integrated into negotiations with national and international partners, sectoral plans, and the private sector. K. Coordinate efficiently and effectively mobilizing biodiversity and ecosystem financing by cooperating with ministries or institutions responsible for economics and finance and national and international partners. L. Coordinate technical work with relevant ministries and stakeholders to mainstream innovation, effectively enhance, restore, monitor, control, and implement biodiversity resources management and ecosystem services for sustainable development. M. Coordinate with relevant ministries or institutions and subnational administration to mainstream innovation, monitor, and control the effectiveness of implementing policies, strategic plans, activity plans, and legal instruments concerning the management of biodiversity and ecosystems. N. Lead coordination to develop targets and indicators of national biodiversity based on universal biodiversity strategic plans, sustainable development goals, national policy, and strategic framework by reflecting on national situations, priorities, and existing resources. Out. Collect, produce, update, manage, and make publicly available information on biodiversity and ecosystems in cooperation with relevant ministries, institutions, and stakeholders. Thank you for listening. Have a beautiful day and welcome New Year 2025.